I think we just keep things rolling with more stories of some fantastic use cases happening in the network. Something that I don't really have to tell this room about is, again, like the benefits of more IoT, bigger network, more things happening is, really the economies of scale and the ability to improve operations for some projects that, areas that might be underfunded. We think about things like nonprofits, ourselves being one of, whereas you always have to think about efficiency and costs. So I think with CommunityFi, this is a really fantastic story of where they've been able to use Helium in conjunction with food banks in terms of reducing waste, thinking about management of food inventory. So why don't we get Joey and Eugene up here to talk a little bit more about CommunityFi and what they're doing utilizing the Helium network.
Hey, Eugene. How's it going?
How's it going, Joey?
Welcome to the stage. So let's maybe tell everyone a little bit about yourself. I think maybe a lot of folks know who I am. I'm Joey with the Helium Foundation. That's not why we're here, though. So what's Eugene?
So my name is Eugene McGrath. I'm a native New Yorker. Do we have any New Yorkers in the house today? All right. Represent your state, right? So I had the opportunity to start a great company with really great ideals and really addressing some really important use cases. I have been in technology my entire career. I've worked for startups and non-startups. And so I've looked at Helium from a different lens. It's not the crypto lens for me, it's about technology. And I was very, very fortunate to meet a partner, Andy, who's here as well, who had that same passion. What I think is really interesting, and one thing that resonates really well with me is that when I look at Helium, where Helium is today, it reminds me very much of that startup life that I was living in the sense that we were a startup that we wanted to disrupt the entire technology world, right? And it was about making a change and doing better for the community and better for the world. And at that time, we always had so many critics. And I always sat down and said, why is everyone against us? Why does everyone want us to fail, right? And I realized it's because so many people have this legacy mindset that things always used to have to be a certain way, right? I use the analogy of Blockbuster. You always want to go to the store to get that DVD. Who wants to stream anymore, right? And so the one thing I wanted to say is that I'm so thankful for the opportunity with Helium, because what this means for us is a second opportunity to create disruptive technology that is going to completely change the world and for the better. And if you look at the use cases that CommunityFi works on, we work with food banks, we work with food pantries, and our real mission is to help get food from farm to table for people in need. And so my passion is all about giving and giving back, and that's who I am.
Awesome. So yeah, you touched a little bit on what CommunityFi is doing. So you mentioned this food pantry thing. Like, how did that come up?
Yeah, so the food pantry business for us, or that side of the business, really started as a way to give back. We wanted to find a way to use the technology to improve communities around us. And I'll talk a little bit more about food pantries later on, but the important thing to note is that these organizations run on shoestring budgets. They're grassroots. There's a few volunteers are not getting paid, right? And they are providing a vital service, oftentimes feeding thousands of families around the country and around the world, right? And so what started off as an opportunity to give back really turned into them introducing us to customers who had problems. And that's kind of where CommunityFi started, which is, to us, we think of it as like an engineering think tank. We work with customers, we work with other people in the Helium community to find use cases for Helium and help you build that. And so for us, it was food banks and food pantries saying, we have a exterminator, and he has a fleet of vehicles and he needs GPS tracking. And so we'll work with him to build those solutions. So that's why I say it's kind of like a think tank, because we work with customers and other members to engineer solutions to fit their needs.
Cool.
So,
yeah, of course, I come from this background of believing that Helium's LoRaWAN network is an awesome hammer to apply to like a ton of problems. I guess what's particular about Helium sort of drew you into this ecosystem, or like to start solving problems in that sort of think tank way?
Yeah, well, there's a few things. The first one is the cost of data credits is very attractive for scale, right? It really is designed to allow many, many, many devices to connect to the network. The second part is that since it's a public network, it enables me to provide sensors to a food pantry without necessarily having to have a hotspot or a miner in that particular area. So having that public network also means that other vendors, and some of the ones we work with, are also building tools and integration, which now means means it's easier to deploy, less expensive to deploy if I don't have to build my platform from the ground up, where I can work with a partner of Helium to build a really fantastic platform that I can then customize for each customer. These are the things that have really helped because it brings down the cost of deploying LoRaWAN and sensor solutions. Really, it brings them really, really low. And that's really what has spurred a lot of our farm business as well as some of the other use cases.
Yeah, so this farm business, so we talked a little bit about this before, but you went out and solved a problem, the food pantry, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell me a little bit more about like how, like you don't make money on that, right?
Correct.
So how does that serve your business?
So what we decided long ago is that we would always have a charitable arm to CommunityFi. We call that CommunityFi for good. But really, what ended up happening was all these food pantries always wanted to reciprocate. So what we said was, let's provide you everything that you need. Let's provide you temperature sensors. Let's provide you GPS tracking for your vehicles so that maybe the deliveries, people know when the deliveries will be there, right? Let's help you solve some of these problems. We don't want to charge you money for that. We want that to be a free service that CommunityFi for Good is doing to help our community. And they said in turn, how can we help you? What can we do to help CommunityFi succeed? And so we said, allow us to put a hotspot or a miner, right, in your location. Let's put an antenna on your roof. If you're okay with that, that helps us with that expense. And so what's really happened is that we've taken off, and now these food pantries now have our antennas all across Long Island, and we are now mining HNT and being rewarded in HNT and being able to provide that service at no cost to the food bank and food pantry, which is great for our community and great for the Helium Network as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you create just much more robust coverage for anyone else that wants to go out and use the network. How does that like crypto conversation go? Sometimes I think folks in this audience are gonna have had that weird conversation with an uncle or something like that about crypto.
Yeah.
Like when you're out pitching an idea or you're pitching an installation, how does that come across for folks that maybe don't know much about it or are suspicious of crypto?
Yeah, so I have actually never had a customer say no because it's crypto. Really, what we should be looking at and the way we should approach this is that this crypto and HNT is an enabler for us to do some great things and make change. So, for example, this food pantry has a shoestring budget. They may have a $20,000 budget. That includes rent and transportation and gas, right? That's not very much. So they really don't have money to spend on technology. That's not really in their budget. So being able to provide them technology such as refrigeration sensors, because let's face it, most of these food pantries and food banks, a lot of this gear is donated. So these refrigerators are likely to break, right? Used gear is always more likely to break. So providing them a service such as being able to monitor their refrigerators and also track their vehicles at no cost is transformative. So we've never actually had a customer say, oh, it's crypto, that's no good. Because we explain that this is an enabler, this is a way for us to provide a service and subsidize the cost of that service. And they've been all on board with that completely.
That's great. Trying to think, there's two ways I want to go with this. I want to learn more about your deployments. I also want to learn more about how this model like has moved in different ways for you. I'm going to do the first one. So when you go set these things up, what does that look like? Who are the sensor sensor builders that you're leveraging? What are you doing to represent this data? Like, what are the actionable inputs that a food bank looks for when you set something up for them?
Yeah, so we work with a number of sensor manufacturers. I think some of them are here, and we've actually met some new ones here, so we're really excited about that. We work with Dragino a lot on temperature sensors. We work with Brown on a number of different sensors as well, and we work with Digital Matters on the GPS side.
Yeah.
And we've been able to do some really cool things, and I can show you some of the use cases if you want to see on the screen.
Let's flip to those slides.
So, the first use case that we targeted after the food pantries, and one of the first opportunities that arrived was around farming. And if you actually scan this barcode, this actually takes you to a study from the University of Nebraska. And what it's about is the impact of overwatering on crop yields and how overwatering a field can produce 16% less crops. And what that means is less food. And for farmers, it's oftentimes single-digit margin, right? And so that could be the difference between them going out of business and thriving. And so we've actually embraced this community, and we have a trip in a couple of weeks to Oklahoma to deploy additional sensors at different farms around cattle and as well as other livestock and chickens, as well as soil sensors, so that they can maximize that yield and not have to worry about their crops going bad. So it's a fascinating study if anyone's interested in reading.
Very cool. Yeah, what are some other like opportunities where you've been able to like reach out to your community and like isolate these problems to solve?
So one of the most interesting use cases that came out of the food pantry is someone who said, we have motocross, where our son is involved in motocross. We have RVs. We would love a way to be able to protect them and track them. And so we partnered with a really good friend to design what we're calling Moto X5. And it is basically fleet tracking as well as vehicle tracking, specifically for dirt bikes and RVs and people who go on vacation. If you have an RV share, you have an RV that you're Airbnb-ing out, and you want to
know that was a thing.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to know that that RV is taken care of. Maybe you want data such as performance. Are they driving it too fast? So being able to provide that solution to them, and also farmers using this to be able to track, is their corn at the right temperature as it's in transit to the store or to the farmer's market? So a really, really great use case that we found, and the community's really embraced us with this one.
And there's some cool stuff out on the floor in that domain right now too.
Oh yeah.
Really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, we good?
Yeah. This is a good one. So, like, maybe you can talk just a little more about the actual deployment and like
Sure.
how this is scaled across New York.
So there is a real need here, because over 32 million Americans are at risk of hunger. Right? The need is really, really great. As I mentioned earlier, these organizations are grassroots. They have really small budgets. Technology is the last thing on their mind. Oftentimes, the computers they receive are ones that the school district no longer wants, right? And so it's all old technology. The other part about food pantries, a lot of times they're in areas where there's really high crime rates. And so the number of food pantries we've spoken to where there's break-ins and they're never even alerted, they have no idea because they can't afford that technology. So what we've been able to do with our community is provide these organizations with not only refrigeration sensors that have a really great range in case their antenna goes down, but also things like GPS sensors and also door sensors as well as motion detectors. So being able to help them protect their asset, because to us, there's nothing more important than making sure that that ear of corn gets from that farm to a needy family's table, right? And that's what we're doing with the community, and the community's really embraced us and has really helped us expand into other areas. And our local food bank, which is huge, they've sponsored us and really partnered with us to do some great things with the community. So.
That's great. Any sensors that you've seen here today, or things that you're excited about, like solving problems with, sort of in the future, or like in the back of your head?
There's actually a few. So one of the things I mentioned is that we have this concept of CommunityFi for all, which is we want to collaborate and help other people within the Helium family build businesses and find use cases and document those use cases. A good friend of mine and a good partner, and I think he's here today, Chip. He's been working with group homes and nursing homes, and there's a great need there, not only just in refrigeration sensors, but also things like making sure the medicine cabinet is protected and it's alerted, and you have door sensors on those. And so there's use cases around that I think is really, really interesting, and really finding all the possible uses for IoT within that one group home, and then helping build a blueprint for anyone in the community to use. And that's really what we're really excited about. And the second area is around what we're calling healthy forest. And we know that there's other like wildfire detection systems out there, but is there anyone who's really also not only trying to detect wildfires, but also determine are the rivers flowing the way they should? What are the water levels? Are the migratory patterns of the animals telling us something about maybe the fires coming from this direction, right? So being able to map out a forest, understand where that the risk is. Also telling them, giving them data around the soil, and then taking all this data and collecting it over a period of time, so we can provide meaningful results. And so we have this idea of really building a healthy forest, not just wildfire detection for those use cases. So that's one of the things I'm very excited about, really exploring. And we're in the very early stages of working with a very, very large forest out in Long Island to launch a proof of concept, but I think that could be a game changer when we talk about animal and wildlife conservation and forest conservation as well.
That's really exciting. We see a lot about digital twins for buildings and urban settings, but I personally haven't seen one applied to the forest setting. Fascinating to think about how far a solution around that could go.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. Any takeaways for folks that are maybe listening to this thinking about like, oh, maybe these are the parts that I can start putting together to approach my community? Like, how did this kick off for you, what are the next steps that you see for anyone that's maybe thinking about doing something in similar model to what you've done here?
Absolutely. So always look for the use cases. When it comes to what's next for CommunityFi, I mentioned that we want to be an enabler for the community. We want to help people build businesses and deploy solutions. So there's a few ways that we're doing this. We're starting to build an open source library, and we are all about open source, of blueprints and how to go to market and build solutions for group homes, for forests, for food pantries and food banks. We want to enable anyone within the community to be able to do this within their local geography. The second thing is, if you're just not an engineering person, you're not electronically inclined, we actually have a program where we'll help you, we'll onboard the sensors, we'll manage that sensor and monitor it for you, so you can focus on finding those use cases and building that out, and you could still make money off of this. So we want to be that back-end solution provider for you to help you get to there. So even if you're not technical, I encourage you to reach out. And the third is that when you find new opportunities and new use cases, please reach out. Let's talk about it. Let's see if we can help you fine-tune that. Even if it's your use case and you don't want us involved, we're all about enabling the community and really seeing Helium thrive and be the disruptor that we know it is.
This is what building usage on the network looks like for anyone that wants to try it. Like, you can just get in there, buy a sensor, throw it online, and you're solving somebody's problems.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, any last comments for the audience? I think we're...
Absolutely, yeah. So the last thing I would ask everybody is that there's 3 really important QR codes here. Giving back is a big part of what we do, and it's important to us. So if you feel so inclined and you want to donate to a local pantry, this is one of the first pantries that we deployed at, and they're doing some great work. Or if you want to find a food bank to donate to locally, please do so over there on the right. If you want to learn more about us and find use cases that you can deploy in your communities, feel free to reach out. We're always here to chat.
Yeah, I love it. You gave to your
thanks so much.
community. Your community came and gave back to you, build a
100%.
business, solving problems. It's great. So,
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Joey.
thanks, Eugene.